Our story begins in the throne room on Mandalore as sparks rain from the shattered domes of Sundari. Explosions echo faintly through the glass and durasteel walls. Ahsoka stood in front of Maul, the rogue former Sith, who glared towards her like a predator, eyes burning with urgency, as he spoke the words, "He has long been groomed for his role as my master's new apprentice." Ahsoka's eyes narrow. In the original timeline, Ahsoka would go on to call Maul a liar and further state that his visions were flawed. But in this timeline, Ahsoka feels a flicker of uncertainty in both her very bones and in the Force itself. Maul speaks further, telling Ahsoka to search her feelings. He senses that Ahsoka has seen dark side traits inside of her master. The fear, the anger, and that those were the very things that Sidious desired most. Ahsoka's voice is quiet as she says, "He's not like you." Maul, voice intensifying, tells Ahsoka that Anakin was exactly like him. That was why Maul understood, he said. In fact, Maul was so certain of Anakin's fate that he orchestrated the Mandalorian Civil War to lure Anakin there with Obi-Wan so as to kill him, and thus depriving Sidious of his prized apprentice. She steps forward slowly, her hands gripping her lightsabers as her fingers were resting on the ignition button of each of her weapons. Ahsoka hesitated for a moment. Then Maul spoke. "Dooku was always a pawn, as was Maul," he said. "Skywalker was the prize." Maul's words hang heavy in the air as memories rise unbidden in Ahsoka's mind. More than several of her missions with Anakin, his fierce defense of Palpatine, his frustration with the Jedi Council, his recklessness, and his loneliness. If Maul was right, Ahsoka said, then they needed to act now. Maul reinforces this, saying that they needed to stop it before it began. Ahsoka hesitated, but then made her decision. She then says that if they were going to do this, then they would do this in her way. She then came up with the idea to make it look like she captured him. That would keep the clones and the council from asking too many questions. Maul gives a crooked smile, almost amused and yet taken aback by her cleverness. But then Ahsoka tells Maul to not think for a second that she trusts him. With precise force, Ahsoka would ignite her lightsabers and leap forward, slamming Maul into the throne with the Force, cracking the stone. She binds his arms in durasteel cuffs, just as clone reinforcements rush in. Ahsoka reports that Maul had put up a fight, but that he was not going anywhere right now. Maul snarls and plays along, hissing like a cornered beast. As the clones drag him away, Maul glances back. Ahsoka meets his gaze, no smile, only determination. Later on, the hum of the Mandalorian sarcophagus vibrates softly in the silence of Maul's cell on the Venator. Ahsoka stands alone before Maul's cell, asking if there was anything else that he knew. Maul telepathically says that it was only fragments, whispers in the dark. He says that Sidious's grand design was still in the works, Sidious working in the shadows, but that he knew that the Jedi's downfall was near. Ahsoka presses her lips together, staring through the force field. Somewhere out in the stars, Anakin Skywalker was descending into darkness, and she may be the only one who can stop it. Immediately after this, the holograms of Master Yoda and Obi-Wan Kenobi stabilize, with Yoda standing amid the roots of Kashyyyk, flanked by clone officers, whilst Obi-Wan is standing against the rocky backdrop of Utapau. Ahsoka then reveals what Maul had told her to the two masters, with Obi-Wan's reaction being to immediately feel for Anakin in the Force. Obi-Wan confirms what he feels to Yoda and Ahsoka, telling them that all he felt from Anakin was conflict, fear, and pain. Yoda tells Obi-Wan to return to Coruscant immediately, and Obi-Wan tells Yoda that he was already making preparations to leave and that he would contact Anakin on his way there. The holograms flicker and vanish. Ahsoka stands in silence, then turns and strides out. In the council chambers, Anakin Skywalker stares out over the city, hands clasped tightly behind his back. His heart pounds in his ears. Palpatine's words echo inside of his mind, and inside him, a storm is building. The Chancellor had trusted him. The Jedi had not. The one man who could save Padme from death was now in danger. However, the comm unit beeps with an incoming message. Anakin hesitates, then accepts. Obi-Wan appears on the hologram, to Anakin's shock, and tells him that he had just spoken with Ahsoka. Anakin reveals that Palpatine was the Sith Lord that they were looking for, and Obi-Wan reveals that Maul had made a similar claim to Ahsoka. Obi-Wan says that he believes that something terrible was about to happen, but he tells Anakin to not act and to trust in the Force. Anakin closes his eyes. The Force feels distant to him because all he can feel now is fear. The fear of losing his wife. Anakin asks the big what-if question. What if Master Windu kills him? What if Palpatine was their only chance to save Padme from death? Obi-Wan's expression darkens as he then asks Anakin what he was talking about. But Anakin cuts the transmission before Obi-Wan can press further. He turns, his jaw clenched. The cityscape burns gold in the Coruscant dusk. He storms out of the council chambers, headed for the Senate. Meanwhile, Maul was still in the Mandalorian sarcophagus as Ahsoka stands just outside of it. Her jaw set as she informs Maul that the Jedi were trying to get through to Anakin. Maul is consumed by fear, telepathically telling Ahsoka that she'll arrive too late to stop Sidious. Ahsoka stares at him, torn between instinct and urgency. But she tells him to wait, threatening to kill him if he is lying. She turns, issuing orders to Rex to plot a direct course for Coruscant. Something terrible was about to happen. Rex acknowledges her orders and leaves. Time was running out. In the Chancellor's office, Mace Windu, Kit Fisto, Saesee Tiin, and Agen Kolar stand tall and silent, sabers ignited. Before them, Chancellor Palpatine remains seated as Windu announces that the Chancellor was under arrest. Palpatine rises slowly. The mask of frailty slips from his face, replaced by cold, ancient power. The conversation goes as it does in the original timeline, and without warning, Sidious strikes. With a flash of red, Palpatine ignites his lightsaber and launches into a deadly spin. Agen Kolar and Saesee Tiin fall instantly. Kit Fisto blocks 2 strikes, then collapses, as Mace then locks blades against the whirlwind of the Sith Lord. On the Venator, Ahsoka stands on the bridge as Captain Rex approaches. Rex informs Ahsoka that they had entered Coruscant space. Ahsoka orders Rex to prepare a transport, informing him that she was headed to the Senate building, and also ordering him to get the rest of the Clone Legion to the Jedi Temple. Rex hesitates, then salutes before leaving. Ahsoka also turns and disappears towards the hangar. As Rex thought to himself, his mind went back to Fives and the inhibitor chips. He would then proceed to head to the medical bay that was nearby. He was starting to feel as though Fives was right about the plot against the Jedi. The duel between Mace Windu and Darth Sidious rages across the office. Windu channels every ounce of his strength and precision, forcing Sidious back via use of the pod. And with a final strike, Windu disarms Palpatine. The Sith Lord collapses against the window ledge, lightning burned and gasping. But this was only a play as Anakin ran in just a few moments later. He rushes in, breathing hard. He sees Windu, saber pointing towards Palpatine's throat, poised for the killing blow. Palpatine lies cowering, weak, frail, but also deceiving. The conversation between Anakin and Windu goes similarly to how it does in the original timeline, and Windu tightens his grip on his weapon. Palpatine's expression shifts as he knows what is about to happen, but keeping up his lies and deception. Anakin's blade swings, and Mace Windu screams as Palpatine once again throws him out the window. Meanwhile, a sleek Republic transport weaves through the skyline. Inside, Ahsoka stares grimly ahead. The city trembles with dark energy. Suddenly, she feels it. Similarly to what she had felt in Season 7 just before Order 66 in the original timeline. Her breath catches, a shift in the Force, a wound, as she senses that Anakin was in trouble. She didn't know what had happened, only that the light in the Force was dimming. In the Chancellor's office, Anakin is named Darth Vader as the storm rages outside. Ahsoka lands silently, with clones patrolling nearby as she slips past them unnoticed. Her communicator, however, then buzzes. It was Rex, who, after having his inhibitor chip removed during the trip to Coruscant, informs Ahsoka that the 501st has been recalled to the Jedi Temple and that a new order had come directly from the Chancellor. All of Ahsoka's troops had also joined them, and suddenly weren't themselves. Ahsoka tells Rex to be careful as she looks towards the spire of the Jedi Temple. She then runs towards the temple doors, and upon getting inside, she saves Padawans and younglings, fending off the clones with ease, but still refusing to kill them. However, upon entering the temple archives, she then comes face to face with Darth Vader, blue lightsaber blazing as his hood covered his face. Ahsoka would get into a fighting stance, now realizing the horrible truth that she, the former apprentice of Anakin Skywalker himself, had been far, far too late. Meanwhile, in the Venator, Maul remains in the Mandalorian sarcophagus, but suddenly, the door opens to two clones who had secretly been ordered by Jesse to execute him. They open the sarcophagus and release Maul, firing their blasters as soon as they did so. But the blasts never hit Maul because he used the Force to deflect them and send them back towards the clones who dodged. Then, Maul would use the Force to brutally kill both clones. As this happened, red alarms began to blare as Palpatine's voice echoed across the ship, as he then issued Order 66. Maul's eyes burned, the anger inside of him burning like a fire that refused to be controlled. And as he growled, he would simply walk out, as he would then search for his lightsaber. Our story continues on Coruscant as blaster fire roared inside of the Jedi Temple, like wild beasts that were certain to extinguish their prey. Ahsoka and Anakin dueled amidst the chaos, blue against blue. Ahsoka moved with fluid grace, while Anakin moved with efficiency, fluidness, and pure strength that not even Yoda could match. Yet even during the unimaginable chaos that was unfolding, Ahsoka still tried to reach her former master. She told him that she was sorry for not coming sooner, and tells him that if he had come to her about whatever was going on, she could have helped him. Vader doesn't listen and continues to attack Ahsoka. Meanwhile, on the Venator, Maul marched through the hallway as blood, screams, blaster fire, and confusion rocked the ship. He would find his lightsaber on the belt of one of the clones, and use the Force to ignite it before summoning it. Then, after carving his way through the rest of the clones, he would steal a ship from the hangar, making his way to the Jedi Temple. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan's troops would turn on him while he was en route to Coruscant. Thus, he was forced to escape in an escape pod. Luckily, he crossed paths with Bail Organa's Tantive 4, where he would meet with Yoda. Yoda explained that Order 66 happened while he was getting ready to leave Kashyyyk, and Bail Organa had rescued him. This goes similarly to how it goes in the original timeline, and they set a course for Coruscant. Meanwhile, in the Jedi Temple archives, Anakin and Ahsoka continue their duel, emotions spilling out in the process. However, during the fight, Ahsoka senses it, a flicker of fear, the fear of loss. Ahsoka would use this to her advantage, asking Anakin what it was that he was so scared of losing. Then, upon sensing Anakin's thoughts, she sensed that it wasn't what he was scared of losing, but rather who he was scared of losing. This was a fear of losing Padme. So Ahsoka, after being driven back, and when Anakin readies himself for the killing blow, would go on to ask the question that would change everything. What would Padme think of him now? What would Padme think if she found out that Anakin had murdered Jedi Knights, murdered children, for her behalf? For the first time, Anakin hesitated. Then, Maul would jump into the fight, taking both Anakin and Ahsoka by surprise as he savagely attacked Anakin. Ahsoka, however, knowing that her master was still in there somewhere, attacks Maul in return, trying to get the former Sith Lord to stop. Maul persists, however, and attempts to kill Ahsoka, but Anakin, who has turned back to the light side, attacks Maul in retaliation, and Maul is consumed by fear as Anakin readies himself to kill him. Ahsoka, though, gets in the way and explains Maul's alliance with her. Anakin understands, and the three Force users leave the temple so as to hide in the Coruscant underworld. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan and Yoda arrive on Coruscant a little bit earlier than in the original timeline, and they pick up Maul, Anakin, and Ahsoka. Obi-Wan is surprised to see that Maul is with Anakin and Ahsoka, but after Ahsoka explains, the two masters trust her, but with much hesitation to do so. The five Force users then make plans to confront Sidious that night before his plans were officially complete, and they set off straight for the Chancellor's office. Meanwhile, Palpatine looks upon Coruscant with an evil smile as he feels the deaths of many Jedi throughout the galaxy. Then, however, he feels Anakin in the Force, and he feels that his loyalty wasn't as absolute as he had previously thought. He then attempts to leave the Chancellor's office so as to confront Anakin, but it is too late, as 6 blades then ignited. Maul had his saber staff, and Anakin was leading the charge, now fully realizing the scope of Palpatine's cruel manipulations. Palpatine's eyes glowed with malevolent glee as he rose to his feet, the darkness around him coiling like a living monster that would give even demons nightmares. His yellow gaze locked on Anakin, who stood at the front of the group, his face a mask of determination, yet behind his eyes flickered the pain of betrayal and the guilt of recent sins. Palpatine spat out his disappointment, his voice echoing with a dark resonance as Obi-Wan and Yoda realized Anakin's role in all of this. Anakin's voice trembled at first, but grew steady as he told Palpatine that he had trusted him to save the one he loved, trusted him to do what was right. His eyes narrowed before then angrily telling Sidious that he had lied to him and twisted his fear into something monstrous and destructive. Maul hissed, his saber staff humming menacingly as he attempted to attack Sidious. Ahsoka also attacked, blue light casting a glow across her face. Yoda's small frame stepped forward, calm but firm as he attacked as well. Obi-Wan, his saber held in a tight grip, cast Anakin a look that mixed sorrow and hope, but he followed suit. Palpatine's laughter filled the room, cold and triumphant, as he thrust out his hands, lightning surging towards the Jedi in a blinding cascade of white and blue. Anakin, driven by a newfound clarity, intercepted the lightning with his saber, the energy crackling and arcing around him. He grunted under the strain, but held firm, his blade an unwavering barrier between Palpatine and his friends. Anakin growled as he pressed his attacks, his eyes locked on the man who had deceived him, the man who had ordered the attacks on his wife. Maul lunged in, his saber staff spinning like a crimson cyclone. But Sidious met his attack with a savage swipe, countering Maul's blows with vicious efficiency. Sparks flew as blades clashed, each strike echoing the thunder in the Grand Chamber. But then, Sidious would ultimately gain the upper hand on Maul after separating the Jedi from him, and Maul would die at the hands of Sidious. Ahsoka then moved to flank Sidious, her twin blades dancing in a blur of motion as she parried a slash that nearly took her head. Yoda leaped high into the air, flipping over Sidious and landing behind him, his small green saber slicing downward with precision. Obi-Wan and Anakin moved in tandem, pressing the advantage. Sidious roared in fury, the dark side swirling around him like a storm, as he swore that the galaxy would bow before his wrath. Anakin's saber locked with Sidious's crimson one. Their eyes met, dark and light clashing in a silent, desperate battle. Anakin would then argue, no, the galaxy would be free from the tyranny of the Sith. With a final surge of power, Anakin's blade pushed Sidious's saber back, opening his guard. Ahsoka darted in, her sabers whirling, one slashed high, the other low. Sidious staggered, his face contorted in disbelief as the twin strikes found their mark. Obi-Wan and Yoda held Sidious down with the Force, as Anakin would then pierce his blade through the heart of the Sith Lord, extinguishing the darkness that had consumed the galaxy for far too long. The Chancellor let out a strangled scream, his face contorted in agony as the dark side recoiled from his dying form. His eyes met Anakin's one last time, a final whisper of venom.
You were destined to be mine.
Anakin stared back, his face resolute. No, I choose my own destiny. Sidious collapsed, lifeless, as his presence in the Force dissipated like smoke in the wind. Silence filled the chamber, broken only by the sound of ragged breathing. Anakin looked around at Ahsoka, Obi-Wan, and Yoda, each of them worn out, but alive. Obi-Wan exhaled deeply as Ahsoka glanced at Anakin, her expression equally being relief and uncertainty as she asked what would happen next. Anakin turned towards the shattered window, the cityscape of Coruscant stretching out before them. Fires still burned in the distance, a reminder of the pain and darkness they had all endured. A reminder of the destruction and agony that Anakin had caused. Anakin, in response to Ahsoka, would say that they would rebuild and find all of the survivors. Yoda nodded gravely and accepted Anakin's words. Together, the four Force users stepped forward into a galaxy forever changed by their choices. After that night, many survivors would return to the temple, including Cal Kestis, Caleb Doom, and Baylan Skoll. Obi-Wan would become Master of the Order, taking Mace Windu's place after his role in taking down Sidious. Padme would ultimately give birth to twins Luke and Leia, and she would survive. Ahsoka would rejoin the Jedi Order, and she would ultimately become a Jedi Knight as a result of this. Bail Organa would be elected as the next Supreme Chancellor after the evidence of Palpatine's identity was exposed, and his first act as Chancellor would be to deactivate Order 66, and to work with the Jedi to make sure the galaxy would recover. Anakin would struggle with his guilt after everything that had happened, and he would inform Obi-Wan and Yoda of his decision to leave the Jedi Order. The two masters would ultimately understand, and Obi-Wan would tell Anakin that he would always be there for him no matter what happened, and promises to visit him. Ahsoka would also promise to visit Anakin whenever she could. Yoda says the same, while also allowing Anakin to keep his lightsaber. Yoda thanks Anakin for ultimately bringing balance to the Force. Only a single nod is given in response to all of this, before Anakin sets off for Naboo with Padme and their children, where they would live in a cottage on the Naboo countryside. It is on Naboo that Anakin feels as though one chapter of his life had closed, and a new, happier chapter had begun. And so, ultimately, due to this, and due to the guilt that he still felt for his actions on Coruscant, Anakin would ultimately close himself off from the Force, as balance was finally restored.